Hey everybody, I'm JB, and today we're going to dive into the brand new Global First unit, Moore the Merrier, that just came out today. And here's my first impressions. So, first thing to note is that her mastery ability is giving a massive 15 accuracy, just right off the bat. And we know that she has access to Rune Knight, so she does have Sharp Mind as well, which can give her another 20. So, just out of the box, this is going to be a very accurate unit. So let's take a look at her other stats and see what else she has. So in terms of her damage resists, 5% to slash, 15% to missile, and 10% to magic. Also, very, very nice places to start. The only weakness that she has, base, is going to be that strike damage at -10. Now, generally, as I've said in the past, strike damage is something that I generally kind of throw out the window, just because it's not really a meta damage type. It's not something that we see, all the time, at least yet. And secondly, it's kind of a neutral or a negative for the majority of units in the game. So I don't really pay that one too much attention. In terms of the other ones, slash, missile, and magic, those are the predominant damage types that we see, and very good places to start, particularly missile. And class match, in particular, missile is something that we see quite often with units like Jaden and Frederica and, Setia in the future. I'm sure we'll see quite often. So I like to see that. Looking at her status res ailments, she does have access to a 50% charm resistance. And, in the manual class match scene, Zazan in particular is a pretty common pick for his low cost and high mobility. So having access to that charm to shut him down is always good to see, good to have in the back pocket. When I'm looking at her stats, her hit points are definitely a feather in her cap, coming in at just over 3,700. That's going to be among the top magic dealers, damage dealers in the game. You can compare her to a unit like Ibarra, who we got recently on Global at 3,900 HP, or somebody like Kilfei, which just over 4,000. So very, very solid. You can think about with the resistances she has to back them up, back up the hit points. She could potentially be built out as somebody who is very tanky and maybe even in the bruiser type category if you build upon these sort of base attributes. So it's always nice to have that option at your fingertips. Now, in terms of her raw magic, very nice total here, 567. That's going to be putting her, among the top UR, mages in the game. 61 agility. It's not a great, but it's also not really to the point where it's really bad. Usually sub 60, you're kind of in a bad spot. 61 is something that's workable, especially because she has access to an agility passive that can increase that further. So for dex and luck, the dex is decent enough at 260. Luck is sort of middling, kind of middle of the road. So it definitely will help that she does have access to all the accuracy up to sort of build on that lower end luck total. Now, obviously, More the Merrier. She has a brand new job, the Apothecary, and she has some unique support abilities that she has access to. First one being her Thriving Mentality, which is a 12% agility and 24% magic. I can see this one getting, probably the most use out of all of these here that she has access to. And, of course, because agility, you can never go wrong with it. And then, as somebody that's dealing magical damage, any way to buff that up is always a nice to have. Interestingly, her other unique passive to her job gives her some increased chances to apply both poison and sleep. So that's something that we'll consider as we sort of dive into her skills and look at those and see how that's going to impact her chance to land those. But this is not something that we've seen too often in the game to date. So I like to see them building upon some of the groundwork that they laid with Shadowlink's EX, for example, with her sort of increased stop ability that she gets. So, applying, reliably applying different status effects is certainly, a pretty fun and interesting game style and mechanic. And I like to see them expanding on those ideas and giving us those options to use that particular approach. In terms of the other passives, she has some different things she could use here. Of course, Sharp Mind is one that I mentioned earlier, and that's certainly going to be a favorite for if you're particularly looking to hit high evade units like the Elenas and UR Zazans of the world. Her unique counter for her job is called Mind Over Magic, and this is essentially just a Spellblade's magic guard. It's something that we've seen on a few different jobs, and it's just a 20% chance to mitigate some magic damage. So it's fine. It's nothing super reliable or great, but it's a nice to have, especially with all the sort of magic damage, magic skill damage that we have in the meta, units like Elena and Jaden and Ibarra. So in terms of her skills here, I know I'm just going to look at a couple here and highlight a couple that I think are very interesting. And the first is is basically her 2 buffs. The first one being her Good Health and Happiness, which gets an EX upgrade. And this one basically just provides some tankiness for your party with a 20 defense and spirit, which is that's cool. But it also provides her a regen effect. And the interesting thing about this regen effect is that it's 20% per tick potency. Now, normally with regen, we've seen from like White Mage, for example, and that's generally been at 10% restored per tick. So having this sort of highly potent regen is very cool. With the high hit point total that we talked about in her stats, you can expect her to be getting 1400 health back per tick. If she's in that 7k hit point range, which is very achievable for her. Her second buff, kind of building upon that, is that and kind of her survivability and sustain is that she has access to re-raise. And the interesting thing about her re-raise is that it comes kind of packaged with some other buffs, and that's going to provide her 40% magic, 30% accuracy, and 30% healing power. Now, the unique thing about this buff is that these additional effects basically last until the re-raise is consumed or dispelled. And that's a mechanic we haven't seen yet in Global. On the Japanese side, it's something that they've seen with Astoria with his Immortal Courage, Immortal Spirit Courage buff. But this is the first time we're seeing it on Global, and kind of a new mechanic for us, and very, very cool as well. Now, one thing to note is obviously, a couple things to note is the accuracy, right? It's sort of building upon this, the passives that we've already mentioned earlier, but also healing power. And the interesting thing about healing power is that it's going to increase that regen, effect even further. If, say, she uses the regen turn 1 as a party buff, and then she has time, if we're talking auto, if she has time to then, apply this on herself as well, her regen is going to be suddenly 30% more potent. So very, very cool. All of a sudden that 13, 14, gets closer to like 18, maybe 1900 potentially. Now we kind of get into the bread and butter of kind of her damage skills, and these are very, very unique. First one being her chance to sleep, right? We already talked about the passive that she has access to. Now, kind of to start, as we see with most sort of regular damage or ailment infliction chances in the game, she starts out at the 25% faith check. She gets the 15% available to her from a passive, and then this particular skill can also increase it by another 20% if she has currently either a regen effect on her or an auto restore on herself. Now, regen, of course, she has access to that. auto restore would be like an AP restore, which interestingly she does have access to as well on her job 25. She can get a 15% AP restore with this damage skill Meridian Channel. So that puts her at roughly 60% chance to apply sleep, which against like a 97 faith unit is basically a guaranteed hit, you know, assuming they have no innate resistances. So very, very cool to have a reliable, you know, basically guaranteed against, you know, a high faith unit. You know, even if that particular unit is in, say, like a 50 faith, maybe it's a tank or something like that, it's still going to be a very, you know, decent chance to be applied, probably somewhere in the 70s. So that's cool. Because the one thing about sleep that maybe some people don't realize is that when that target is asleep, they actually will take additional damage of 50% additional damage on the next attack. So you can think about comboing this, you know, with another damage dealer, and all of a sudden, you know, that next attack is going to do massive damage. So the next one is her poison ability, and this one is an AoE poison, right? Pretty decent range on it, you know, up to 5 range, you know, including the AoE. And this one does a lot, right? It's but it's basically it's relying on that poison to be applied for some of these additional effects to actually come to fruition. So the first is that, you know, it's going to be basically a 40% chance to poison at the kind of standard 10% per tick damage. And if you actually land the poison, it looks like it's going to then decrease both their defense and spirit. So it's going to break their defense and spirit, and then also decrease the healing power. So just sort of a massive debuff if she can manage to land that poison. And again, this is like her highest range skill, right? So in an auto game, it's something that she, you know, as she's sort of approaching the enemy, that's something she's going to be looking to use. But obviously, like in any mode of play, you know, range is, especially for somebody who's not, you know, super tanky, you're going to be wanting to stay at range, and you know, having access to that 5 range is very good. But this debuff is pretty crippling. You know, again, this is something that's going to amp up the damage of her team if she's able to land it. One sort of other interesting interaction with her poison. Well, first of all, let's just talk about the chance, right? So 25% plus if you equip her passive, she'll be at 40% base. Assuming the target is at 97 faith, that's going to be somewhere like around 77% chance to proc, assuming no innate resistance. So it's not like a guaranteed kind of situation, but it's, you know, it's pretty reliable. Interestingly, she has this in her apothecary sub-job. She has hypodermic surge. And this is kind of a cool interaction, because you can see here the effect on this is that it increases her poison damage by 20 times. Right? So if you set up your move first with this hypodermic surge, and then do your divine toxicology, all of a sudden you're going to have a 30 times poison damage, and basically that means 30% per tick. So if you think about like landing this on like a tank unit, you know, all of a sudden that's going to be almost 1/3 of their HP pool taken away per turn. So that's pretty cool. Not something that we've seen before. So this is another sort of unique capability that she has in sort of amping up her poison damage. And this is really cool for manual play. I think that's, you know, getting this set up properly in an auto sense will be very difficult to do, you know, if impossible, right? Because this is only like a single target, you know, move, and you know, it's not her hardest hitting single target move either. But in the controls of like a manual player, I can see this being very powerful, especially if you've set it up, you know, with quickeners. and that she can move in, apply the poison buff to herself, and then follow up after the quicken lands on her to then do her divine toxicology. And at that point, if they're not dead, then on that unit's next turn, that poison at a 30x potency is probably going to kill them at that point. And as we've kind of seen in the past with units like Venera and Halloween Raryu, poison can be very effective against units that have a mortal spirit, and that poison basically will tick through and not proc a mortal spirit, and that unit will die. So very, very cool. We see a lot of Immortal Spirit in the meta, Elena's, Engelbert's, Zazan that we've talked about too. So a lot of interesting sort of unique mechanics that we haven't really explored before in the War of the Visions, which is pretty exciting. In terms of her sub-jobs, like Rune Knight, I can't see a lot of cases where I would actually use her Rune Knight because it doesn't provide the Rune Knight's best ability, which in my opinion is Hazard Slash. And the other kind of cool ability, Drainification, she would get, and at that point it would really just be for an HP absorb, because the slash resist penetration wouldn't be super relevant for her, other than maybe on the Aroga Blade. And the Aroga Blade is just such a really short range that I can't see myself investing in taking this ability. I think you're either going to be taking the Apothecary for access to Hypodermic Surge, if you're using her as more of a damage dealer, or you're going to be taking Time Mage for sort of a support Quicken style, setup. So that is her skills. One other kind of interesting note on the poison front is that come around 2nd anniversary, we are getting Chaos Odin, which, if you didn't know, actually has nodes on its board which increase the chance to poison the target by up to 25%. Very, very interesting when you think about that, right? So all of a sudden you can take what we talked about here as a 40% chance to poison, and you can put that up to a 65% chance to poison. I believe it's 25%. Let me just double check that. It may be 20. Let's pull it up real quick. So here's Chaos Odin. He's going to be coming like with the first dual element vision card as well, which is cool. All right, so you can see here's sort of the nodes which are increasing the chance to apply poison by 16, 20, so 25%. Okay, so I was correct there. So that's basically like an LB equivalent. Usually limit breaks are 67% on their chances to apply status effects. Assuming that she has Chaos Odin and she has her passive applied, she'll be at 65% to apply poison. At that point, against like a 97 faith unit, you're at a guaranteed poison, unless they have built up resistance. That's awesome. I can't wait to play around with that, and I hope that Chaos Odin is sort of the start of a trend in terms of giving some reliable chances to hit certain status effects and kind of making that a more of a viable play style and strategy to build around. So very, very cool. So that basically sort of wraps it up for my first impressions. This is as we've kind of looked through the kit here, this is a solid all-around unit. It's a very accurate unit, right? We saw a lot of ways to sort of build up and enhance accuracy. And I did put together a couple of builds here actually too that I'll just highlight real quickly. You can think about more of like a magical based wins team here with Joom and HLL. But you can see here, like, I've sort of gone, maybe more all out with accuracy here, and she's at 123. And that's not even with like an Alex ring, right? That's just with the spectacles here. So it's not going to be difficult to build her to be very reliable in hitting units like Elena and UR Zazan, who have very crazy evade totals. Especially since we got the winter coat, right? They can get up there well over 100 evade very easily. So very cool to have somebody that can counter that, especially, you know, somebody who's centered around status effects. Here's kind of another interesting build in that you could do sort of a, you know, a mono-based double quicken. And this is something that could very easily fit into like, you know, cost restricted content as well, right? Because you have the lower cost Leela and Helena here as well. So Moore, actually, you know, obviously she has the time mage sub. She could play sort of a dual role in that she can quicken and then maybe also follow up with some damage. Helena, you know, as we know, has that time mage, and you know, she can get to be very, very fast for an MR unit when she has the Black Rose card. But if you think about, you know, one sort of unique thing about the new Vision card that came with Moore is that it provides 20% Earth resistance, and Leela's card that she, you know, Typhon that she would generally use provides 20% wind resistance. Very, very interesting when you also consider that Helena and her EX Bar Aurora provides, you know, wind and earth resistance as well. So if you're looking to maybe counter either earth or wind, you know, this team can easily do both, which I think is, you know, maybe something that not a lot of people would realize. You know, obviously being wind, they're going to be able to counter earth very well, and the new Moore card is kind of a win more button in that regard. But also, you know, at the same time, being able to counter wind very effectively too, you know, with access to those buffs is very interesting, very very cool. So something to think about. I always like the idea of sort of a mono double quicken. You know, it's something that Ice has been able to do, like with Shell and Gilgamesh. Now Wind is going to have that capability too. And picturing little Leela with both Typhon and this new, you know, Fervor, the festival card, is just going to be absolutely crazy in the damage that she's going to be able to put out. But yeah, just a couple other things I wanted to highlight real quick. And, you know, I can see this unit, you know, as we talked about, being very, very effective against, you know, the evade units out there. And, you know, also being, you know, on the bulkier side, in that, you know, she has the nice sort of, you know, passive resistances and, you know, general HP pool, but also that regen effect that can really help her sustain and keep her alive. So, you know, I pulled Moore today. I'm excited to sort of play around with her and see what she's capable of. And, you know, definitely, you know, tell me what you guys think in the comments below. So I hope this video helped you guys out. And if so, you know, please consider liking and subscribing. And I hope you guys have a great day. And I will see you guys in my next video.